He was born on the 25th of November 1844 in Germany. He was a mechanical engineer who designed and built the first practical car powered by an internal combustion engine. The original car, his three-wheeled motor wagon, first ran in 1885. His company produced its first four-wheeled car in 1893 and the first of its series of racing cars in 1899. He left that company in 1906 to form another group with his sons. His name is Karl Benz. He was born Karl Friedrich Michael Wieland on the 25th of November 1844 in Mühlberg, which is now a borough of Karlsruhe in the state of Baden-Württemberg, which is a part of modern Germany. He was born to Josephine Wieland and a locomotive driver, Johann Georg Benz, whom she married some months later. According to German law, the child acquired the name Benz by marriage of his parents. When he was 2 years old, his father died of pneumonia. Despite living in near poverty, his mother strove to give him a good education. Karl attended the local grammar school in Karlsruhe and was a prodigious student from all indications. In 1853, at the tender age of 9, he started at the scientifically oriented Lyceum. Next, he moved on to study at the Polytechnical University. Karl had originally focused his studies on locksmithing, but he eventually followed his father's steps toward locomotive engineering. On the 30th of September 1860, at just 15 years old, he passed the entrance exam for mechanical engineering at the University of Karlsruhe, which he subsequently attended. Karl graduated on the 9th of July 1864 at the age of 19. Following his formal education, Benz had 7 years of professional training in several companies, but he did not find that he fitted any of them well enough. The training started in Karlsruhe with 2 years of various jobs in a mechanical engineering company. He then moved to Mannheim to work as a draftsman and a designer in a scales factory. In 1871, at the age of 27, Karl Benz joined August Ritter in launching the Iron Foundry and Mechanical Workshop in Mannheim, later renamed Factory of Machines for sheet metal working. This enterprise's first year went very badly as Ritter turned out to be very unreliable and the business's tools were impounded. This difficulty was overcome when Benz's fiancée, Bertha Ringer, bought out Ritter's share in the company using her own dowry. On the 20th of July 1872, Karl Benz and Bertha Ringer, they got married. They had 5 children: Eugene, Richard, Clara, Thilde, and Hélène. Despite his business misfortunes, and I should tell you that Karl Benz was no business genius, he led the development of new engines in the new factory he and his wife owned. To get more revenues, in 1878, he began to work on new patents. First, he concentrated all his efforts on creating a reliable petrol 2-stroke engine. He finished his 2-stroke engine on the 31st of December 1879, New Year's Eve, and was granted a patent for it on the 28th of June 1880. Karl Benz showed his real genius, however, through his successive inventions registered while designing what would become the production standard for his 2-stroke engine. Benz soon patented the speed regulation system, the ignition using sparks with battery, the spark plug, carburetor, gear, and other common components for the car. Problems again rose their ugly heads when the banks of Mannheim demanded that Bertha and Karl Benz's enterprise be incorporated due to high production costs it maintained. The Benzes were forced to improvise an association with photographer Emil Buller and his brother, a cheese merchant, to get additional bank support. The company became the joint stock company Gasmotorem Fabrik Mannheim in 1882. After all the necessary incorporation agreements, Benz was extremely unhappy because he was left with just about 5% of the shares and a modest position as director. Worst of all, his ideas weren't considered when designing new products, so he withdrew from that corporation just 1 year later in 1883. Benz's lifelong hobby brought him to a bicycle repair shop in Mannheim owned by Max Rose and Friedrich Wilhelm Eblinger. In 1883, the three founded a new company producing industrial machines, Benz and Company Rheinische Gasmotorem Fabrik, usually just referred to as Benz & Co. Quickly growing to 25 employees, it soon began to produce static gas engines as well. Now, the success of the company gave Benz the opportunity to indulge in his old passion of designing a horseless carriage. Based on his experiences with and fondness for bicycles, he used similar technology when he created an automobile. It featured wire wheels, which was very much unlike the carriage's wooden ones, with a 4-stroke engine of his own design between the rear wheels, with a very advanced coil ignition and evaporative cooling rather than radiator. This power was transmitted by means of 2 roller chains to the rear axle. Karl Benz finished his creation in 1885 and named it Benz Patent Motorwagen. It was the first automobile entirely designed as such to generate its own power, not simply a motorized stagecoach or horse carriage, which is why Karl Benz was granted his patent and is regarded as its inventor. Now, the topic of who created the first automobile is always a touchy one, so we're going to leave that for another video. Now, the Motorwagen was patented on the 29th of January 1886. Now, the 1885 version was difficult to control and it led to a collision with a wall during a public demonstration. The first successful tests on public roads were carried out in the early summer of 1886. The next year, Benz created the Motorwagen Model 2, which had several modifications, and in 1889, the definitive Model 3 with wooden wheels was introduced, showing at the Paris Expo that very same year. Now, Benz began to sell the vehicle, advertising it as the Benz Patent Motorwagen in the late summer of 1888, making it the first commercially available automobile in history. Now, his second customer of the Motorwagen was a Parisian bicycle manufacturer named Emile Roger, who had already been building Benz engines under license from Karl Benz for several years. Roger added the Benz automobiles, which were mainly built in France, to the line he carried in Paris, and initially most were sold there. The early 1888 version of the Motorwagen had only 2 gears and could not climb hills unaided. This limitation was, however, soon rectified after Bertha Benz made her famous trip driving one of the vehicles a great distance and suggested to her husband the addition of a 3rd gear for climbing hills. In the course of this trip, she also invented brake pads. The world's first ever long-distance automobile trip was undertaken by Bertha Benz using a Model 3 Motorwagen on the morning of the 5th of August 1888. Bertha, supposedly without knowledge of her husband, took the vehicle on a 104 kilometers or 65 miles trip from Mannheim to Pforzheim. Now, this is regularly something very easy to do now. However, back then there were no roads for vehicles and it was really a daunting task, and she did this to visit her mother. She took her sons Eugene and Richard with her. In addition to having to locate pharmacies along the way for refueling, she repaired various technical and mechanical problems. One of these included the invention of brake lining After some longer downhill slopes, she ordered a shoemaker to nail leather onto the brake blocks. Bertha Benz and her sons finally arrived at nightfall, announcing the achievement to Karl by telegram. It had been her intention to demonstrate the feasibility of using the Benz motor wagon for travel and to generate publicity in the manner now referred to as live marketing. Today, that event of Bertha Benz's trip is celebrated every 2 years in Germany with an antique automobile rally. In 2008, Bertha Benz Memorial Route was officially approved as a route of the industrial heritage of mankind because it follows Bertha Benz's tracks of the world's first long-distance journey by automobile in the summer of 1888. Benz Model 3 made its wide-scale debut to the world in 1889 at the World's Fair in Paris. About 25 motor wagons were built between 1886 and 1893. Now, the great demand for static internal combustion engines forced Karl Benz to enlarge the factory in Mannheim, and in 1886, a new building located at Waldhofstrasse operated until 1908. Now, this was added. Benz and Company had grown in the interim from 50 employees in 1889 to a staggering 430 employees in 1899, just 10 years later. During the last years of the 19th century, Benz was the largest automobile company in the world with 572 units produced in 1899. Now, because of its size, in 1899, Benz & Company became a joint stock company with the arrival of Frederick von Fischer and Julius Gaunt, who came aboard as members of the board of management. Now, Gaunt worked in the commercialization department, which is somewhat similar to what we call today marketing in contemporary corporations. The new directors recommended that Benz should create a less expensive automobile suitable for mass production. And in 1893, Karl Benz created the Victoria, which was a 2-passenger automobile with a 2.2 kilowatt or 3 horsepower engine, which could reach top speed of 18 kilometers per hour or roughly 11 miles per hour, and had a pivotal front axle operated by a roller-chained tiller for steering. This model was largely successful with 85 units sold in 1893. The Benz Velo followed very shortly after that. In 1895, Benz designed the first truck with an internal combustion engine in history. Benz also built the first motor buses in history, and this was done in 1895, and these were built for the Nettpina Bus Company. In 1896, Karl Benz was granted a patent for his design of the first flat engine. It had horizontally opposed pistons, a design in which the corresponding pistons reached top dead center simultaneously, thus balancing each other with respect to momentum. Benz got some competition from Gottlieb Daimler, who died in March 1900, and there is no evidence that Benz and Daimler knew each other, nor that they knew about each other's early achievements. Eventually, competition between Daimler Motoren Gesellschaft (DMG) in Stuttgart began to challenge the leadership of Benz and Co. In October 1900, the main designer of DMG, Wilhelm Maybach, built the engine that would later be used in the Mercedes 35 horsepower of 1902. The engine was built to the specifications of Emil Jelinek under a contract for him to purchase 36 vehicles with the engine and for him to become a dealer of the special series. Jelinek stipulated the next new engine be named Daimler Mercedes after his daughter. Maybach would quit DMG in 1907, but he designed the model and all of the important changes. After testing, the first was delivered to Jelinek on the 22nd of December 1900. Jelinek continued to make suggestions for changes to the model and obtained good results racing the automobile in the next few years, encouraging DMG to encourage and engage in commercial production of automobiles, which they did in 1902. Benz encountered with Parsifal, introduced in 1903 with a vertical twin engine that achieved a top speed of 60 kilometers or 37 miles per hour. Then, without consulting Benz, the other directors hired some French designers. France was a country with an extensive automobile industry based on Maybach's creations. Because of this action, after difficult decisions, Karl Benz announced his retirement from design management on the 24th of January 1903. Although he remained as director of the board of management through its merger with DMG in 1926 and remained on the board of the new Daimler-Benz Corporation until his death in 1929. He was inducted in the Automobile Hall of Fame in 1984 and the European Automobile Hall of Fame. Benz's sons Eugene and Richard left Benz and Company in 1903, but Richard returned to the company in 1904 as the designer of passenger vehicles. That year, sales of Benz and Company reached 3,480 automobiles, and the company remained the leading manufacturer of automobiles. Along with continuing as director of Benz and Company, Karl Benz would soon be the founder of another company, C. Benz Son, with his son Eugene, and closely held within the family. It was a privately held company for manufacturing automobiles. The brand name used the first initial of the French variant of Benz's first name, Karl, spelled with a C. In 1909, the Blitzen Benz was built in Mannheim by Benz and Company. The bird-beaked vehicle had a 21.5-liter, 150 kilowatt engine, and on the 9th of November 1909, in the hands of Victor Emery of France, the land speed racer at Brooklands set a record of 226.91 kilometers per hour or 141.94 miles per hour, said to be the fastest automobile at the time, and it was dubbed to be faster than any airplane, a record that was not exceeded for 10 years by any other land vehicle. It was transported to several countries, including the United States of America, to establish multiple records of this achievement. Karl Benz, Bertha Benz, and their son Eugene moved 10 kilometers east of Mannheim to live in nearby Ladenburg, and solely with their own capital founded the private company C. Benz Sons in 1906, producing automobiles and gas engines. The latter type was replaced by petrol engines because of a lack of demand. The company never issued stocks publicly, building its own line of automobiles independently from Benz and Company, which was located in Mannheim. The Benz Sons automobiles were of good quality and became popular in London as taxis. In 1912, Karl Benz liquidated all of his shares in Benz Sons and left the family-held company in Ladenburg to Eugene and Richard, but he remained as director of Benz and Company. Now for a fun fact. During a birthday celebration for him in his hometown of Karlsruhe on the 25th of November 1914, the 70-year-old Karl Benz was awarded an honorary doctorate by his alma mater, the Karlsruhe University, thereby becoming ding 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 Dr. Karl Benz. Now, in wider Germany, there was harsh economic crisis, and the crisis worsened. In 1923, Benz and Company produced only 1,382 units in Mannheim, and DMG made only 1,020 in Stuttgart. The average cost of an automobile was 25 million marks because of rapid inflation. Negotiations between the two companies resumed, and in 1924 they signed an agreement of mutual interest, and this was valid until the year 2000. Both enterprises standardized their designs, production, purchasing, sales, and advertising, marketing their automobile models jointly, although keeping their respective brands. On the 28th of June 1926, Benz and Company and the DMG finally merged as the Daimler-Benz Company, baptizing all of its automobiles Mercedes-Benz. The name of that DMG model had been selected after 10-year-old Mercedes Jelinek, the daughter of Emil Jelinek, who had set the specifications for the new model. Karl Benz was a member of the new Daimler-Benz Board of Management for the remainder of his life. A new logo was created in 1926, consisting of a three-pointed star representing the motto, engines for land, air, and water, surrounded by traditional laurels from the Benz logo, and the brand of all of its automobiles were now labeled Mercedes-Benz. On April 4th, 1929, Karl Benz died at home in Ladenburg at the age of 84 from a bronchial inflammation. Until her death on the 5th of May 1944, Bertha Benz continued to reside in their last home. Members of the family resided in the home for 30 more years. The Benz's home now has been designated as historic and is used as a scientific meeting facility for a non-profit foundation, the Gottlieb Daimler and Karl Benz Foundation. These honor both Bertha and Karl Benz for their roles in the history of automobiles. Now that's a little bit about Karl Benz, and if you liked this video, please subscribe, please like this video, and you may share with your friends, and do come again as we have other videos just for you.